In a galaxy far, far away, two brothers joined together on a quest to explore the Star Wars universe. These are the Star Wars Bros.
And welcome to a special edition of Star Wars Bros Canon Recap, the show where we usually highlight some of our favorite additions to the Star Wars universe from the novels, comic books, and other Star Wars materials. But this show is a little different. I'm joined as always by my fellow Star Wars bro and real life brother Brad. How's it going, Brad?
It's going great. Good to be here talking Star Wars with you once again.
Absolutely. Let's not bury the lead anymore. I was in the middle of editing our latest Star Wars Bro Canon Recap podcast, which I promise will be coming very shortly, but it was interrupted today when news broke this morning of the Star Wars Episode 8 title, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Brad, I want to know your take on the new title and what implications this has on the franchise moving forward.
I love the title. It's so simple that it's coming out that people guessed this title or like 2 years ago, but it's just so simple. It speaks so well to what we hope that we're going to be seeing in this next film, which is all Luke. We want more Luke, and this is what this is. It's setting us up for that.
You would hope that it would be setting us up for Luke, but I want to go back real quick on something you just said. You said some people guessed about this like 2 years ago. Were there actual people that actually guessed the title correctly 2 years ago?
Yeah, there was I was reading an article earlier. I can't remember who it was through, but someone had 2 years ago done like I think it was when they were trying to guess the Force Awakens title. Did a mock-up of
Oh,
the Star Wars and had the Last Jedi in it.
that's a happy coinkydink, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So like,
But yeah, let's really get into. Sorry to kind of jump the ship there, but I really found that interesting that somebody would have guessed the title 2 years ago, even before The Force Awakens came out. But let's kind of get into the title name, The Last Jedi. That does have implications that we will get a lot of Luke in this. I think we were under that impression anyway by how The Force Awakens worked, how it ended, and how little of Luke we saw in that movie. And it's always been a Skywalker story, so I assumed we'd get more Luke. But The Last Jedi gives us some implications that I'm interested to hear your. I have a couple theories myself, but I'm interested to hear your take on what you think the implications are on The Last Jedi. What do you think that means?
well, I mean, there's several things it could mean. Uh, the Last Jedi, it draws my mind back to uh, I believe it's A New Hope. No, sorry, it's Return of the Jedi. I got it mixed up there. My bad. Return of the Jedi, when Yoda looks at Luke and says, "When I'm gone, the last Jedi you will be."
Yeah,
And that it's immediately with title throws my mind back to.
yeah. I
Um,
guess ever since I've heard that, ever since Star Wars has been airing, and you're starting to see Kanan and Ezra, I've always interpreted that line as, "Oh, Ezra and Kanan aren't going to make it out." But now it's interpreted a little bit differently. That Yoda could mean forever.
yeah.
So do you think though? Do you think that means Luke is going to die before he finishes Rey's training, before she can become a Jedi Knight, or do you think she still is considered a Jedi even if she's a Padawan? I mean, this gets into some theories that we're assuming Rey only has minimal training and isn't a full fledged even a Padawan yet. Um,
Well, yeah, so we're doing that, but The Force Awakens really opened the game up to a lot of new things with J.J. Abrams coming out and the Lucas Story Group coming out and saying there are no Sith in The Force Awakens. That pretty much means that the Sith are no longer in existence. So what we're seeing in the dark side user of Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens is a different type of dark side user than the Sith, which could harken to there being a new light side user come out of
See,
this.
that's sort of the way I was going with how I assumed it was implied. Because I noticed that little detail that J.J. Abrams gave from The Force Awakens as well, saying that there are no Sith left. Um, And Kylo Ren is obviously using the dark side of the Force. He's tapping into emotions, he's tapping into anger, tapping into passion to get his power, tapping into pain at the end when he's like hitting himself in his wound. That is to draw on the dark side of the Force, to draw on his suffering, to draw on his pain, to become more powerful
Right.
in the dark side of the Force. But I think there are different interpretations. It's sort of how what I was sort of getting at with The Last Jedi. I think that Luke could be the last Jedi with still training Rey in the ways of the Force, but who knows? Luke could have easily found out that the ways of the Jedi weren't necessarily the right way to go about the Force. The
Exactly.
total detachment of compassion and a detachment of people is something that Luke struggled with all the way through the original trilogy, and I can't really see him not struggling with it afterwards. And I don't, and even in the comics, it's showing that he time and time again still has attachments to his friends and is still loyal to his friends. And that was shown to us in the prequels to not be the way of the Jedi.
Right, and I couldn't have said that better. And you actually kind of see that, and it makes you wonder if Obi-Wan would have not have confronted Vader at that point in time, if Obi-Wan would have taught him to detach himself or to use some of the attachments because he saw what total detachment caused in Anakin.
Well, I
And
mean,
I I
Obi Wan even had issues with following the Jedi the Jedi code of the Jedi Order.
right.
I mean, Qui Gon even said, or no, Anakin even says to uh, Obi Wan. I think it's Anakin that says to Obi Wan, or it might be Qui Gon. I can't remember. I just read this. Says if you just followed the Jedi code, you would be on the council. You would be on the council.
That's Obi-Wan to Qui-Gon and
That's right. It is Obi Wan to
Phantom
Qui Gon.
Menace.
Good call.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew I
But
read
yeah,
it somewhere.
yeah, no. And it's kind of like Qui-Gon was kind of the start of trying to reform the Jedi Order in a way to get rid of some of these codes that were antiquated from, what's legends now as the Sith Wars.
Well,
Um
yeah, it makes you think that
so
Yoda's interpretation of the Jedi code and the way he took the Jedi was pretty was it what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't extreme, but it was to one end of the spectrum. He went to the very conservative side of the light side of the Force, where very very kind of monk-ish.
he took it in the literal sense of the code rather than the practical sense.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely some
So
guidelines up to interpretation, and I think this might be what it might be hinting at. It's either hinting at that we're going to lose Luke Skywalker at some point, or it's hinting at the fact that what we knew as Jedi before, that may be changing now. That like there still will be Force wielders, but they won't be considered Jedi in the traditional sense of the word.
right, I think we might be seeing Jedi open themselves up to using some of their not being completely detached and using some emotions to so that way they're not so susceptible to the dark side.
Speaking of the dark side, we still have multiple Skywalkers left in this universe. Technically, Kylo Ren is a Skywalker by blood, and he was trained in the ways of the Jedi. So when it says the Last Jedi, could it be plural? Could it still be referring to Luke and Rey? Could it be referring to Luke and Kylo, or Luke, Rey, and Kylo? Could it be a collective terminology, like usage of that term, or is it just in the singular term usage?
Well, I mean, it could be a number of those things. If you ask about Kylo still being a Jedi, that one's tricky. I mean, we've seen Jedi delve into the dark side of the Force before in canon.
And remember,
Um,
you said, as you said earlier, J.J. Abrams said there are no Sith left in the universe. So
right,
if
there are
Kylo
no.
Ren isn't a Sith, what is he?
That's a great question, and I don't know if we have enough information to
I
answer that. I
I don't
mean,
think we do either. I think I gave you a question you couldn't answer.
yeah, I think you did. But with the title, I would have to until we know more, until we get a trailer or something like that. I would have to say stick with the singular on the Last Jedi.
And
Part of me
and you
wants
think it's referring to
wants
Luke?
I think it's referring to Luke. Part of me wants to say it's referring to Luke and Rey. Um,
Like they are the
it's
last
a
Jedi?
they are the Last Jedi,
Hmm.
and another another part of me wants to say that uh it's just Luke. So I'm gonna stick with the just Luke because of the quote from uh Return of the Jedi, if
Because
that
of
makes sense.
because of the Yoda quote, "How are you are the last of the Jedi."
Yes.
I think that's a solid way to look at it. Um, I still look at it. I look at it kind of the same way. I look at it like the Last Jedi. They are referring to Luke, but I look at it as they're referring to the last of his kind. As in, there are still going to be Force wielders. It'll be more Force sensitive people. But as you see the Sith dying out, since there are no Sith left, I feel like there's no need for the Jedi anymore. There's no
Yeah.
need for that balancing act because it is all balanced. There are no Jedi.
Right.
There are no Sith. The Force is balanced.
Right.
But that's not all that came out. The title wasn't just the only thing that was announced. Something else was attached to that as well, right, Brad?
Yeah. So with the tweet that StarWars.com tweeted this out on their Twitter page, and the tweet reads, "It's official. Star Wars: The Last Jedi is the next chapter of the Skywalker saga. This December. #The Last Jedi."
And the internet exploded with, "Aha! I told you Rey was Luke's daughter," right?
Well, I don't know if the internet exploded with that because a lot of people have fallen off that train, but I'm pretty sure I exploded in text to you with that because I have never fallen off that train.
Yeah, it's true. I forgot you were on that train still. Yeah, this just added more flame to that damn fire that won't go away. That Rey is Luke's daughter, and I, without getting too much into that theory, delving really deep into that theory, I hope it's not true because then you have more questions to ask. Like, okay, who's Rey's mom, and then why isn't Rey's mom there? And you have all these other things that you have all these questions about, and it just leaves more plot holes and I guess leaves more story opportunities later down the road, but it's just more questions I have to ask about characters that I feel like should be answered within the film itself. I shouldn't have to rely. I don't mind relying on the expanded universe of the books, of the literary universe, and the comic book universe to fill in the gaps on information about the Star Wars universe and Star Wars canon, but I don't want to rely on them to fill in vital information about a character's background.
Right, and the reason I'm still on that train, and I'm not 100% on that train. I'm open to Ray being a new character, so to new ideas, but it's just that the 30-year gap that we have no idea what's happened to Luke Skywalker in.
And we really don't because
And
only Shattered Empire deals with stuff right after the Battle of Endor, and then you get into it a little bit into Aftermath, Life Debt, but you don't really, no, you don't quite get to that point yet in Life Debt. You're
you
you're
you haven't
almost
heard
there.
anything of Luke during that point.
No, not at all. Luke is
Yeah.
only he's only mentioned maybe not even mentioned in any of the Aftermath series. Because I
Not
know,
to my that's what I remember. He's not anywhere mentioned in the Aftermath
yeah,
series. Um, there is mention of him in Bloodline, but it's more just the fact that he's off training with Ben, and
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
So like that's I mean,
But yeah, so you don't really hear anything about him in after the Battle of Endor, even in the literary universe. So there's literally a 30-year gap where you have no idea what he's been up to. They've been very close-lipped on where on Luke's whereabouts within the universe after the Battle of Endor, and I think that's on purpose. I think that's
Yeah,
very, very much on purpose, and I think we have a big storyline going through, and I think they're waiting for episode 8 to be released to kind of flesh out his older character more,
I
so the novels don't give anything away, don't give any spoilers away.
I think so too. I think once episode 8 is released, all of a sudden we'll start getting more stories of Luke in that time frame.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. But back to the tweet, it talks about the Skywalker's story. I still believe that episode 7 is still a Skywalker story because you have Ben Solo in there. So I feel like what that tweet tells me is that not only is this going to be Luke's movie, but this is going to be Kylo Ren's movie as well. We're gonna see.
I,
I think we're gonna see just as much Kylo Ren as we see Luke Skywalker, if not more.
well, and this is where I disagree with you as much, and that's because this goes back to Kathleen Kennedy quote back when they were promoting The Force Awakens, where she said the saga films are the story of the Skywalkers.
Exactly, which is why I'm
And
saying it's the story of
the
the
where I'm
Skywalkers. Ben Solo
right
is a Skywalker.
where I'm gonna disagree with you, and the fact is, I think this story is more going to be this chapter of the story is actually going to be focusing on the older of the Skywalkers. It's going to be focusing on Luke and Leia. I think we're
Um,
going to get a lot of Leia in this
I
because
think the
Leia is
Leia.
technically
I
a
think the.
Skywalker.
I agree, but I think the Leia you get in this has to deal is interacting with Kylo Ren. I know they've said she has a General Leia has a significant role in Episode 8, The Last Jedi, but it feels so good to be able to give that a title now. um,
Yeah, it
um,
does.
but I think that significant role is going to be playing off of Kylo Ren's story arc. I
Y-
think they have something golden. They have a golden opportunity here. Star Wars does to follow a story arc of a villain that is irredeemable. He killed Han Solo. A lot of fans believe he is irredeemable. So if they take you on the path of redemption and they are able to tell it in such a way that it even makes the even most ardent fans or ardent critics of Kylo Ren for killing Han Solo, if they're able to make them turn and believe in the redemption story, if he has a redemption story, I think you have a lot of possibilities there, and you just have a lot to work with. You have just so much potential to write
Right.
a great character development story, great story arc for a villain. Even if you don't give him a redemption story, you can give him an all out villain story and still write a great character arc. You can show him tumbling to the dark side, unlike we got with Anakin, which was just a very quick turn in Acts 2 and 3 of Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you have a
So
way to really show his fall to the dark side if you just follow his storyline, follow his story arc. Which is why I think
I
this
think you're
is
onto something there.
you're gonna see more Kylo Ren than you're gonna see Luke Skywalker. Not by much. I just think there's kind of a passing of the baton. I think that's what you're gonna see.
Yeah. I think you're onto something right there. I think you're gonna see. I don't see Kylo Ren redemption story happening in this set of this trilogy of the saga.
Yeah,
I think
I'm not
I
convinced
think
about the
the
redemption part. I just think you're going to see more of him on more of his story arc than people led on to believe.
well, and see, here's where where I've been saying this all along. If Rey is not a Skywalker, Kylo Ren is going to get a redemption story.
Because there has to be a Skywalker.
It has to be a Skywalker in the saga unless they pass it off in some way.
Yeah,
But
I think you might be right. I think it's either or. It's not
yeah,
it's either she is a Skywalker or Kylo Ren gets a redemption story.
right.
I think you
And
might be onto something there. I mean, I obviously I reserve the right to change my mind, as any Star Wars fan should
right.
do. um, that actually leads me into the final thing I wanted to talk about. The coloring of the title was different. It's red. What did you think of the red lettering? And I guess not lettering, but the outline.
I think I've heard this a lot. I've watched, a lot of YouTube videos today that has detailed, what their thoughts on it. And
Like this,
I,
the dumb theory that it could be Darth Maul. It
I,
needs Darth Maul's Snoke.
I I liked on Collider Movie Talk today. I think it was Christian Harloff talked about how it just kind of we all knew they were setting a darker tone for this movie, and that's just what that did. Is that just it told you it's not going to be your typical Star Wars saga film.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly the purpose of it. I think it was there to set the tone, to be like, this is Star Wars, but with a little bit of a different feel. I think that's where we're going to wrap things up tonight, Brad. I wanted to keep this kind of a shorter kind of podcast because I just wanted to discuss the new title release. But what were your final thoughts on the new title, Star Wars: The Last Jedi?
I think it's just a perfect title for this film where we're hoping to get a lot more of Luke Skywalker, a lot more of our favorite characters and our new favorite characters of Rey and Kylo and Finn and the whole group. I'm just excited to see the first teaser trailer when it drops, and I'm keeping my eye out and I can't wait.
Yeah, I agree. This title is a perfect way to, one, get fans talking because I think it is vague enough that it gives us plenty of things to discuss, but open enough to leave it up to many different types of interpretations. So I really enjoyed. I'm really looking forward to the first trailer drop, which hopefully happens by the Super Bowl or by Celebration. Either way, we will get it in a couple months. But that wraps it up for us tonight. Brad, where can people find you?
They can find me at Bradley Dunnigan on Twitter.
Excellent. You can find me at SDunnigan on Twitter as well. For Brad and the rest of the Star Wars bros out there, I'm Steven. Thanks for listening, and may the force of others be with you.